pleasure of I want to introduce a very, very dear friend who has something to tell all of us. But before, just a few, as they say, housekeeping arrangements. After we have our dessert here tonight, you're all welcome to go downstairs. We're going to have after-dinner drinks at the bar. And by popular demand, a return performance by Mr. Paul Coyne, who is that. And anybody who was here for the 95th birthday in this very establishment will remember Paul. And he has the most gorgeous voice, and he is going to entertain us with some songs and some favorite songs of Mom's. So that will be downstairs, in addition to the signing of what we have now called the book. And it's with great pleasure I want to introduce somebody that I've known for a very long time. We started out on a sort of a day in September in 1974 on the banks of the Charles River in Boston together. And have journeyed through life since then. And about 9 months ago, when I asked my friend Steve, would you write a biography of our parents, he sort of looked at me, Steve being an accomplished, well-published author of 2 biographies, the most recent a 500-page biography of Omar Bradley, incredibly well received by the critics, awards everywhere. But I could see him saying, Laura, you know, your parents? I write about Omar Bradley. But I think I'm going to let him speak the words of how the conversion, as we Catholics would say, came about with my good friend Steve.
Hey, Steve, the conversion.
Yeah.
Don't count on it.
And so it's with great pleasure that I introduce somebody that my mother now refers to as her personal biographer. My very, very dear friend, Steve Osad, who's going to talk to us about the book. Downstairs, we have a copy for every family, sort of one per household, as they say. And Steve will be happy to sign that book, and it's our gift to all of you. It's a story that I think will resonate with every single person. It's not just about the Aubuchon Corriveau family. It's really about all of us in this room. So anyway, enough about me and over to Steve.
All right.
Thank you, dear friend. First, I have to say it's a unique and exhilarating experience to be in a room filled with strangers about whom I know so much. I'll try to scream louder. When one of my closest friends asked me to write the story of her family, I had more than one reaction. I was flattered, but I had questions. Why would somebody hire a World War II historian to write about their family? Second, after a very long time, I'd received great honor and distinction in the work that I was doing in military history. So why would I interrupt my career as a writer that had taken me so long to achieve distinction to write about Laura's family? But I knew, I guess, that a great story always finds its voice. And when I sat down for a series of interviews with Camille, where she talked about her life with Bill, the answer came sharply, and it was personal and professional. Because I found in that story a triumph of the American immigrant experience with a French flavor, an incredible entrepreneurial, inspirational story with real-life flesh and blood characters, a fascinating World War II story of courtship and marriage in a difficult time, and a love affair that transcends death. I also found, in spite of radical differences in my background and Laura's, that there were elements of the story that were my story, and I suspect part of everybody's story here. So I set out to do it, I never thought that it would be as great as it turned out to be, and I never thought it would be as hard to do. But I had an incredible ally and an incredible resource, and that was Camille herself. I've interviewed hundreds of World War II veterans and their wives over many, many days and weeks and months, but I have never, ever encountered a subject with the recall and the brilliance of Camille Aubuchon. Even her mistakes. Even the mistakes she made in repeating stories were exactly the kinds of mistakes that enhance the truthfulness of what you're hearing. But more than that, as valuable as that is for a biographer, the Aubuchons, and Camille in particular, saved everything. Letters, scrapbooks, pictures. I was drowning in material when I thought, what am I possibly going to write about? Most of all, it was the letters, and that's what struck me so hard, because we live in a time where no one, at least no one I know, sits down and carefully considers what they want to write to somebody else. And let me tell you, for a professional biographer, this is a terrible, terrible loss, because you can't write biography on texts. And as I dug deeper into the letters, I saw that there were elements of the story that resonated not only with the work that I do, but would resonate with everyone. But the secret was the letters, and I have to credit my closest friend, Laura, in understanding exactly how important that would be. There were a number of things in Camille's story that appealed to me when I dug deep. The first was her experience abroad, the junior year program at Smith College, from September 1938 to July 1939. Think about that. That's the eve of World War II. And Camille was writing letters, incessantly writing letters to her parents, to her sisters. And all those letters have been preserved. And they are an incredible archive for any historian, because Camille's comments and her observations in real time against what was happening showed not only a rare insight of a young woman, but an appreciation way beyond her years for what was happening. In fact, in one letter, she predicted that the war would break out in September 1939. Now, for a historian, it doesn't get any better than that. But along the way, there were other moments where she met the Duke and Duchess of Windsor at the embassy in Paris during a performance of the Yale Glee Club. And I'm certain that every guy in that Glee Club was hot after Camille. Because I know I would have been. And when you see the pictures of her in those years, you'll be amazed. It was the discovery of her faith, her family, and most of all, her love affair with Bill that really struck me. I guess I must have met Bill a couple of times when I was a young man, but I don't really remember him. And one of the things that I kept thinking about when I was interviewing Camille and writing this book was how sorry I was that I didn't really get to know him. Because I think that he would have appreciated what I was doing and what I was trying to uncover about their lives. And they may seem like ordinary lives, but they weren't. They were witnesses to the great events of our times, and they were participants in those events. Bill's military experience was fascinating. From the time that he enlisted, thinking that it was the right thing to do, until the very end, he led a kind of charmed but fascinating life in the military. first as a trainer of other troops, watching them go off, and then as a participant in one of the most interesting and understudied episodes of the war, a program for college students who were in the Army to preserve our educational institutions through World War II. As Camille described it, it was the most important and fascinating part of their early life together. And as I dug deep, I could see why. They lived a charmed life at the campus of the University of North Carolina, studying French, of all things. But the war had its own pace, and eventually it caught up with Bill, and he was sent to Australia to work in a very secret cryptological outfit for the United States Army Forces of the Far East under a legendary code breaker named Abe Sinkoff. Bill was one of hundreds of ordinary soldiers who maintained and operated the code-breaking machines that won World War II. And that's no exaggeration. The honors go to the generals and the strategists, but it's the ordinary people who do the work who deserve our applause. And that's what he did. And I followed him from the moment he entered in the Army until he came back. And that's where all of you begin, where he came back to his life. But it wasn't a life that he was distant from, because he wrote his father, and his father wrote him all the time about items of inventory in the store in Fitchburg, or which guy got fired because he was drunk, and which new products would be good for the stores. It was an intense relationship. And I have to say, as a student of history, not only a military historian, but also a veteran of Wall Street, it was an incredible story of founder and heir and what that means. I think it's lost to some extent, and I may probe it further. But I learned a great deal about that and the wielding of power between founder and heir. And I hope you'll appreciate that in this book. Most of all, I'm grateful to Camille because I made a friend, and I consider her a friend, and I know she considers me a friend. And that, you can't buy that. And you can't go out to find that. It happens. And it happened to me. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be standing here with all of you and to tell part of this story. And I hope you love this book as much as I loved writing it. And after you're done, I hope you buy my Omar Bradley book.